Greetings survivors and friends, SHADOWFRAX here with the Rust update, and if you've ever fancied the idea of remotely barbecuing a pack of wolf burgers, then have I got good news for you, because it's that magical time again, the time when Uncle Helk plucks some low-hanging fruit from the branches of
Concept Limbo.
Because after having been on the back burner for many months, we finally get those fire arrows. This is the lowdown. At first, you'll have to find them in loot somewhere and research them at a cost of 20 scrap. They're a level 1 workbench item and crafting costs 20 wood, 10 cloth and 10 low grade per 2 of them. Now I know the first thing you're going to do with these, apart from reenacting scenes from Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, is to try to raid wooden structures, but whilst they do some damage to them on impact, the fireballs bounce off instead of sticking and have been set to not do any damage to structures themselves at the moment. They're much deadlier when used against players and animals though, dealing 20 fire splash damage in a 2-meter radius of wherever they land, which makes targets a lot easier to hit, when you can see where you're aiming, that is. Although I must point out this is just a first pass at these, the visual effects aren't final, and the plan is soon for them to have to be lit before use, which means either dipping the end in a campfire or getting a mate to give you a light. Until then, they just magically ignite when deployed. A bit like torches. Oh, and it's worth mentioning that they're destroyed on impact, so unlike other types, they appear to be one use only. Sorry about that. You should expect a few more changes to these in the next update, so hold fire on any criticism until then. But that's not all, because at no extra cost this week, you also get bone arrows. These are a default blueprint, can be crafted anywhere at a cost of 25 wood and 10 bone frags for a pack of 2, and although they travel slightly slower and do less damage, thanks to their bounding box being 3 times larger than a normal arrow, it's far easier to hit someone with them, or far harder for them to dodge out of the way, depending on how you look at it. You'll also notice that HV arrows have a new look this patch, but apart from that, the stats appear to be the same. Now, at the moment, in a push to get Rust into a state where it can leave early access, efforts are being made to make the game friendlier to new players, including hints to help prevent them from making certain common mistakes, such as trying to harvest stone from something that isn't a node using a hammer and talking to other players. And so it's with this in mind that a big change to keylocks happened this week that'll hopefully make the game less frustrating for idiots, I mean new players, and cut out any of that dastardly learning from experience process. Now the person who placed the lock will no longer need a key with them to use it. I mean, they still need to make one to lock it in the first place, but they can just throw it away or eat it afterwards. It doesn't matter. Guests will still need one though, but that's fine. The person who placed the lock can make spares. As well as this, Helk increased the number of possible lock combinations to 1 million, so key raiding probably won't ever happen again. These changes also mean no more locking yourself out of your base or having to stash a key somewhere outside. So what's the point in making code locks, I hear some of you say? Well, they still are a step up in that codes are a lot easier to work with for guests, you don't have to remove the lock to change them, and it's not just one player holding all the privileges. But what do you think? Is this a good change, or does it take some of the fun out of screwing up? Let me know in the comments. Something else that's being worked on for building actually harks back to a long time ago when damaged blocks would get darker the less health they had. This visual progression helped identify possible weak points without having to get up close and personal or whipping your hammer out. As you can see demonstrated here on this medieval Borg cube, this effect should be more pleasing to look at than just a simple darkening of blocks when implemented. Stay tuned and I'll let you know when this happens. Over to the environment now, and some adjustments to fog and wind mean that conditions will change randomly every 18 hours, with foggy weather reaching maximum P super over a 6-hour period. So, Britain, basically. And during clear weather, the atmospheric haze will be completely gone, meaning much better visibility and the world looking less washed out all the time. So, not Britain. In addition to this, the fog algorithm was improved to eliminate unfair advantages from being in a different biome or at a different altitude to other players. It should now appear the same density for everyone. Some night improvements were made, because that is your favourite time after all. Now, stars will be more visible again, and the sky is darker at midnight to reduce the contrast between ground and sky. Yay. Last week I showed you the new Douglas fir model that was being worked on in an attempt to improve our forests, and this week we have another in the shape of some new pines. They're pretty similar to the old ones, but should be cheaper to render and thus better for performance. and thanks to some changes to shaders, should appear more volumetric and less blocky than the old ones. Junk piles were sometimes spawning in odd locations, and thanks to this bit that they have underneath them, could end up looking like a school project sometimes, especially when next to a road. This shouldn't happen now, and they should look more connected to the terrain underneath. Also, the final art for the tool crate was implemented this week. That's the purple box, in case you didn't know. Now you'll see these jobbies in its place, and they should be fairly easy to spot thanks to the yellow post-it. In optimizations now, and checking for whether the player is near a cupboard was a job that was shifted this week more onto the server rather than the client, as this was a significant overhead that could be avoided. Also, some server code was optimized, which ended up eliminating about 3 milliseconds per frame in tests, which is actually a pretty good result. There was an exploit fix too, where some sneaky players discovered that Christmas lights could be made to float in place if the twig they were attached to was destroyed. Apart from the obvious artistic application, this could also lead to sky bridges, so sadly this loophole has been closed. Over to works in progress now, and pants! And by that I mean the British type that we wear under our trousers, which people across the pond like to call pants. Confused? Good. So this is something that's being worked on as an alternative to pixelation. It'll just be an extra option, not a complete replacement, so don't worry. You see, this is something designed mainly to help YouTubers and streamers whose videos are getting flagged for nudity, even though they have censorship turned on. Sadly, the algorithms that are designed to catch actual nudity can't always tell the difference. They just detect a human shape, and if it's all one colour, then they assume the worst. It's not in yet, there's still some fitting to do, and there's no guarantee it'll solve the issue as far as YouTube is concerned, but it's worth a shot. More work on admire animations was done to bring them all up to the same quality, as many of them in the last pass were just placeholder. Here are some of the updates so far. Third-person deploy sounds continue to be added, with only a few more left to tick off, mainly for items that are thrown, and some of the view models have been receiving a tweak to make the animations snappier, with new smoke sprites and effects to add that extra oomph. Scientists are not quite ready to conduct their experiments just yet. There's still some tweaking to do, but I noticed they do now have a new suit and different loot. You should expect to see them wearing blue when they arrive, and the loot they drop at the moment seems to be more geared towards components than anything high-end, but this could all change. In other news, Gary seems to be working on a separate branch of the game called Staging 2, and this is something that's a step towards leaving early access, because it means that people will be able to have two versions of the game, main and staging, installed on Steam at the same time, making it easier to test out new features. The commits log seems to show work has started on the CH-47, which means the Chinook event is on the horizon, which I mentioned in my recent video on the roadmap. This will basically be an airdrop on steroids, where a locked crate will be delivered to a rat town and will need to be defended for a period before it can be accessed. And a new water well mini-monument's in the works, although no visuals on this just yet. Lastly, an addendum to the blog this week was posted, which addresses the recent downtime on official servers and why not a lot's been said about it by Facepunch, as that has been something that a lot of you have been concerned about. I'll leave a link to it in the description for you to read if it's something that interests you, as it does help explain what's been going on. Right, you're up to date now, and if you appreciated this vid, then please leave a like and sub to the channel, pop over to Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and my Steam group too, and I shall catch you all soon, but in the meantime, keep calm and stay rusty. Cheerio.